Hello again there folks, Lone Adventurer here. Thank you very much for stumbling your way upon my channel and joining me for this rundown video of 50 solo games. If you haven't yet seen part 1, in which I cover the first 25 games, there'll be a link up in the corner of the screen right about now and in the description down below. But we're going to get straight to the next 25 games. As a reminder, the aim here is to cover a large variety of games. So there are games that I really like that have been left off this list with the intention of showing you a broad range of games and making sure every single nook and cranny of my solo game collection is represented in some way. With that said, there's no reason to hang around on this occasion. I think we can get straight to the first game. First up, we've got Luchador Hero, Solo Adventures for Crime-Fighting Wrestlers by Head Cheese Productions. This is the second game that we have from Head Cheese in this list, and there aren't too many designers that I've represented twice, but Head Cheese Productions certainly deserves to be represented twice. They've got a number of very enjoyable solo games. And the reason why I've put this one on the list really is because it's an unusual theme for a game. Because crime fighting, luchadors running around, luchadors being Mexican wrestlers, is not something you're going to find heavily represented in the RPG space, solo or otherwise. And because somebody pointed out in the comments for the first part of this list that I don't have any superhero games in this list, I've dropped this one in at the last moment, basically, because this really, as far as I can remember, is the only superhero-related game that I've got for solo play. So here we are. You play a Luchador Hero, a crime-fighting luchador. So that is a masked individual. I'm seeing if we've got any illustrations here. We've got a few masks down there. The illustrations, by the way, are by, oh cool, we've got some nice pictures at the back. Evelyn Morrow, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, a fantastic artist that I always am happy to see their illustrations in games. So we've got a couple of cool sort of like bosses there, I think, at the end. Anyway, you are playing a crime-fighting luchador and you are trying to solve a crime. You create a character. So they have a civilian name like Louis or Juan. They have a ring name like the Undefeated Demon or the Bruiser Angel. And then you have vitality points and resolve points. Resolve points are used to increase the likelihood of success when you do rolls. So you have psychic powers and mutations. You have assets and allies. You have special superhero moves. This is a cool game. There is a playthrough on the channel for this one. Yeah, you're trying to resolve an adventure, sort of tie up a particular adventure. So you roll for a rumour. So for example, huge sinkholes are showing up all over town. Objects and vehicles that fall into them reappear several days later at random locations. Recently, a little girl was playing in the street when one of these sinkholes opened up under her. She showed up 3 days later near the river, confused with no memories whatsoever of what happened while she was missing. Visit her at Our Lady of Broken Bones, the hospital, to find out more. So you go through a series of scenes at different locations. You investigate the scenes. You might encounter enemies. We've got a little enemy table here with the stats. As you investigate scenes, you will encounter tasks that you have to resolve, such as interrogating a suspect or inspecting a crime scene, and you just keep on going through until you collect enough clues in order to have a final scene where you have to have a showdown with whichever enemy is behind the mystery that you're investigating. And we've got a table of super beasts here. So the enemy behind the issue with the sinkholes might be Hell Titan or Cyber Golem. And we've got some stats and abilities for them there. So it is very close to being a journaling game, but one with some cool mechanics and a nice setting, and it's just a pleasing little game that, to my mind, doesn't receive enough love and deserves to be played by more people. So that is Luchador Hero Solo Adventures for crime fighting wrestlers. Next up we've got Kuroi, which is from the designer Peter Schultz, who is one of the more successful designers on Drive-Thru RPG. Peter creates solo-first, solo-friendly games and releases them solely through Drive-Thru RPG, and they are always well-produced and well-received by the community, and you can often find them on the front page of Drive-Thru RPG because they're very popular. And this game is set in a setting called the Endless City, like a futuristic sort of city setting, metropolis. You can see the artwork is big and colourful, and all, I believe, along with these little black and whites, all specifically commissioned for this game. So in Kuroi, you are a covert ops specialist, taking on illegal jobs like robberies, kidnappings and sabotage. It's a dangerous job, the kind of work clients wanted to keep off their records. You usually won't know their names, but that's okay because all that matters is getting paid. So it's played over two separate bits. You have a preparation phase and then a heist phase. So in the preparation phase, you have to take on a series of mini missions which builds up to the main heist. This section is played purely with dice and stats and bits of paper as you go through these tables to work out what missions you're doing. So for example, you might have to hijack a military vehicle in a high security convoy. Then we've got different skill checks that we have to do dependent upon what the mission is. Then there's rewards that you can get for those missions. For example, you might gain weapons with a total cost of 4 or less. That's what you found in the military vehicle that you were hijacking. We've got some random complications down at the bottom. And then when you've done that, you go over into the heist section of the game. And this really is the main chunk of the game. We've got guidance here on how to run heists. You have an objective, you do a little bit of setup, and on the back here we have the heist locations. So I'm not sure where mine is, it's tucked away somewhere, but you print out a location board and then you set up your board depending upon which location you're going into. So if you're going into the boardroom here, then you set it up according to this configuration. I think the C's are computer points maybe, green arrows are guards, the E is exit possibly, I can't quite remember what everything means. So you have variable setups for the heists, and then in the heist you will have a corporation that runs the building that you're going into, and each corporation has a different effect on how it runs. Then you have an objective for your heist. So for example, if it's an espionage heist, you might be trying to rescue a whistleblower. Then you have a client that you're working for, so maybe you're working for a street gang that's sending you in to get the whistleblower, and that has an ongoing effect as well, so there's quite a lot of variation. You've got different enemies that you will face. Some instructions here on how to run a heist. Yeah, it's a really cool little game. You have little pieces that you move around on the board to represent the enemies and you. It feels a little bit like Metal Gear Solid or something like that in terms of like the mechanics of the game, but you've got this sort of heist crime overlay to it. You can do different actions. So you can move during a heist, you can slide or sneak, which are different types of move. You can attack, you can try and distract people. Then we've got special actions like a silent KO or getting intel or hiding a body so that the other guards don't come across it. It's a really cool looking, unique little game that's a lot of fun once you get into it, and if the theme appeals to you, it's very cheap. It's just a couple of dollars really. I got this printed out myself. I don't know if you can do a print on demand of this game. Possibly you can, but you can get it on Drive-Thru RPG, and there'll be a link where you can find out more about this game along with all the other ones in this list in the description down below. Next up we've got Miru, an analog adventure game, and this is definitely a game that appealed to me because of the graphic design of it. It's a really cool, beautiful looking thing, and this is actually the second edition. I think there's a third edition of this now, where it's the orientation of the booklets has been changed to this way, and then it opens up like that, and then I think they've been increased slightly and more content has been added. But this is the second edition, and this is beautiful enough. I love the just the bold, confident layout decisions that have been made in this, and it's a really player-friendly book. Everything is laid out in such a way that's so clear and easy to understand. Here's the steps in the turn, really easy to see. So look, again, you can see the bold, confident graphic design of it. Time to kill a god, because this is a game set in the fairly distant future, after the fall of human civilization, but humans are still around, and we're living a simpler life in little villages, and we're being ruled over by AI gods, and one of these AI gods has killed your brother. So you are going on an overland quest to kill the god who has killed your brother. So it's a really unusual, imagination-catching concept. But once you get past that, you have a reassuringly familiar mechanical game that's really easy to play, but has got quite a lot of depth, especially with some of the stuff that's been added in this edition. You're exploring a map as you're trying to find this AI god. You go into a new location, you roll for terrain. I think there's probably a map at the back. Let's have a quick look. There it is. So you have this map and you have your character sheet. It's done over a series of days. You find out the terrain, you check to see if there's an event. You start drawing your map. It encourages a little bit of like artistic creativity. If you can't draw, there's examples for everything. If you're less confident in your drawing skills, there's examples of everything in here. We've got combat and survival rules. Details on enemies and rewards when you defeat enemies. You can see there's not too much in the way of rules, and just straight into events, basically, things that you might come across. So depending upon the terrain type, you'll have different events. So in the forest, you do a little roll, you might find nothing, you might find a little village or some ruins or an encounter, or it might be impassable. If you roll a ruin, you roll a d6 and you might get an old gas station, and then there's instructions, and then there's a description of that and instructions on what you might do there. We've got some encounters, so you might encounter, what have we got here? Some fresh tracks for a Helper F2. Where's the Helper F2? Oh, okay, so a Helper F2, and then it says, are you going to attack it? Yes, turn to page 40. No, turn to page 42. So you've almost got like a choose-your-own-adventure style mechanics in here. But some of the encounters require combat, and then we have these little stat blocks here. So this is a Buster T7 robot, because there are robots in this quasi-post-apocalyptic future. And they're just very pleasingly laid out. I don't know why I like them, but they're just clear. Everything you need is there, and we've got these lovely little line art illustrations. So that just keeps on going. You've got mountains, and then encounters for the mountains, grasslands, ruins, and encounters for the grasslands, desert, and swamp. And then you've got these things called cutscenes. When you get to certain days, it triggers these little descriptive passages, and certain things happen, and the situation in the game changes. Then we've got these pages for what happens when you go to villages, which also introduces some basic quests that you can take on. We've got details for the quests there. Story choices. This is when it's a turn to page. Then you read about what's going on this page. Then we've got some specific locations that you might find yourself going into depending upon the encounters that you have. So we've got an impasse garden, the cave of Shinda. Then you've got a page on the ending there and some items at the back. So it's not a game that will stand up to many playthroughs, but you don't need that from every single game. And I think Miru has got enough content in it to allow a couple of generous, leisurely playthroughs of it. And it's just a lovely thing that I'm happy to have. I didn't say who designed it, did I? It's created by a designer called Hino Kodu, and I guess Hino Kodu's company is called Mimic Publishing. Alright, there you go. That is Miru, an analog adventure game. Very cool little thing. Next we've got Starship Scavengers from Stephen Hart, who is also the designer of the Z-Lite games that featured in the first part of this list. This is a game in which you are taking a character into various locations in order to scavenge stuff and make money in a sci-fi universe. And what we've got here is the rulebook and 2 assignment books. And the assignment books contain all the information that you need to run a particular unique adventure. So the rules are moderately complex, I would say. I should point out that this is a game that I haven't actually played yet. I have read through the rules and then I got distracted by something else. But there was a couple of things that appealed to me about this game. Firstly, the setting. I don't have a lot of science fiction games, and so I wanted to add this one to my collection. Secondly, the idea of being a scavenger is one that I find quite appealing. As someone who enjoys, like in video games, collecting stuff and gathering bits and pieces, probably why Fallout 3 is one of my favourite games. I was quite happy just trawling around devastated old houses and collecting up bits and pieces that I could use for various things in the game. So for some reason I'm a bit of a collector and I like doing that in games. And thirdly, the assignment books, which we'll get to in a minute. We've got a bit of a prologue here explaining the situation because there is a sort of a fairly well thought out setting for this game. We've got some character generation. Character generation is fairly in-depth. You have stat points that you can spend in order to create a unique character. If you want a pre-generated character, there are some here. So a pre-generated character gives you a ranged, a melee, a tech, a salvage, and a mind stat, and a bonus as well. Or you can go through and create the character yourself. There are cybernetic augmentations that your character can have. There is equipment that you can equip your character with. Then we've got details about how you run the game, how you explore and scavenge the different locations. Details on various mechanics like data hacking and secure access searching. How time works and how you move through a space. Each location comes with maps and you have to move through that map, and it's kind of a push your luck sort of thing. I think you can run out of oxygen, or if your character's injured, you can sort of push on into further, more valuable locations, or you can quit, go back to base and come back on another occasion. So if we have a look at HMS Brutus, which is one of the 2 assignments that I have. We've also got Moon Crash here, and I think there's another 5 or 6 at least that have already been released. So I think these locations are fairly substantial and require multiple plays in order to fully extract everything that you can. And I think a few of them come with like additional mechanics and adjustments to how they play. So we've got a map here of the HMS Brutus. And then each location in the map has pages dedicated to it with what you can salvage. If there's a data point that you are able to hack, details on that. And it's almost like a sort of choose your own adventure book in that you're sort of navigating around the location and turning to different pages to find out what you can find at each location. I won't go through too much more because obviously there will be spoilers. I mean, we can already see there's some kind of crazy cybernetic tiger in the research lab. Spoiler alert. At the back we have got a little bestiary for this particular assignment. So there you go. I like the fact that it's sort of still being supported, that it's expandable, that you have these unique locations and each one has a new zine. That's fun. Makes me think a little bit of Marching Order, which is another solo game that comes with sort of separate adventures, and those adventures have a map and you move around that map as you are experiencing that adventure. And I guess it's kind of like when you're done with that one, then you're done, or at least for that particular character's playthrough. Although, as I said, I'm pretty sure that these require multiple attempts in order to fully experience them. But there you go, that is Starship Scavengers from Grinning Frog Games. They are a really professional, dedicated little independent company, and they produce interesting stuff. And Starship Scavengers is one that I keep meaning to check out myself and do a playthrough of. Let me know if you want to see this one on the channel. Next up we have got Rad Zone Totality from Toby Lancaster at DR Games. Toby is better known probably for 2D6 Dungeon, which I think I featured in the first part of this 50 solo game video. And while Rad Zone Totality does share some things in common with 2D6 Dungeon, it's definitely its own game. And if you are looking for something a bit more substantial, that is set in a post-apocalyptic future, Rad Zone Totality is definitely one to check out. The world faces a terrible apocalypse. Without warning, the sun's radiation spiked to alarming levels, and under the relentless and deadly barrage, humanity succumbed. People fell ill and millions died. Population moved underground into fortified rad bunkers as the sun pushed people deeper into the darkness. Many plants and animals perished and society collapsed. Food and clean water was rationed until people began to starve, and martial law was replaced by irradiated outlaws and bandits who roamed the surface looking for some means of survival. So this is a substantial game. We have got an A4 sized book here with around 150 pages. And in Rad Zone Totality you are managing a settlement in this post-apocalyptic future. And you are going to be responsible for sending people out into the world in order to gather supplies and bits and pieces that your group needs. So you'll have a Rad Bunker roster sheet that looks like this, in which you name individuals. But I think you also have a larger tally of survivors down at the bottom, and then you have a lockup where you keep your equipment. And then you will play a series of episodes. So when you sit down to play a game of Rad Zone Totality, you'll be playing an episode, and you have to set up an episode sheet. So there's kind of a bit of a Blue Peter feel to this game. Blue Peter doesn't make sense to you unless you grew up in the UK, but essentially there's lots of cutting and sticking and colouring and things like that in this game. Let me just grab one of my episode sheets. I haven't played too many, but I have played some. Here we go. You have a mission, you have things you have to gather to complete that mission, and then you also have what happens if you fail. You pick a survivor, and then you have to stick the survivor onto this mission sheet. And then you have a location that you are going to. You have to journey to the location, and again this is stuck down. This is a randomised journey to and a randomised journey from. So to the location where you're completing the mission, and back from the location to the settlement after you've completed the mission. And there's mechanics that guide how you move through this journey. They're quite interesting mechanics. I'm not going to go into details about them now, but you can have various encounters while you are going to and from. And then once you are at your location, You then have a mission location sheet, and there's quite a few of these included in the core book, and you are able to get a PDF if you buy the physical release, so you can print them out. And I think also DR Games sells pads of these, so if you don't want to be constantly printing out your own sheets, because these are one-time use really, there's not really a way to use these more than once. And the colours that you see here have been drawn on by me. So your character starts at an entrance and then they move through, encountering different things based upon the rooms that they are in. And the colours, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, dictate the radiation level in that particular area as you're moving through. And there's mechanics for how to work out what the radiation level is. And the radiation level will sort of influence how you choose to move through the space. And if we turn back to the book and have a quick peek, we'll have a very quick flick, you can see we've got a bunch of locations here that are all different. It's a game really built for repeat play. And here we've got the Journey to and Journey from sheets, so there's quite a few of those as well that are different. Then we've got our survivors, our characters that we can select, and there's loads of those, and they're all different. You definitely get value for money with DR Games releases. And then we've got the tables. As you would imagine, Toby can't make a game, it would seem, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, without including loads and loads of tables. So you've got tables for searching the front seats of cars, searching trucks. These are tables, I think, for searching different locations, maybe? I'm not too sure. Sink and plumbing table, don't know what that's for. There you go, for searching retail spaces, we've got a bunch of tables for that. Searching religious centres, person encounters, office search tables, large house search tables, rules for companions, rules for playing two-player. Lots and lots of content. A game that you can really dig your teeth into and play for a long time if you've got the time, I would imagine. I think there's a couple of different expansions. Like there's one that adds like science labs, so you can go and loot science labs. A really interesting game that I would love to bring to the channel because there's not a lot of playthroughs of it, I don't think. And there's not a lot of games that provide the sort of experience that Rad Zone Totality provides. So if you want some post-apocalyptic excitement in your life, maybe check this one out. Next up we've got Lone Eons, a solo role-playing game from David Blandy with art by Daniel Locke. And I picked this game up when I backed the duo's other game, their group RPG game, Eco Mofos, on Kickstarter, and I knew that they had a little solo game as well, and it was offered as an add-on, so I grabbed a copy. I have not yet played this game, and perhaps this is one that I find a little intimidating because it is more of a journaling game. You won't find too many journaling games in this list, but I thought I would include one or two, and so we've got this one in here. What I can say is I find the artwork very appealing and unusual, and we've also got another post-apocalyptic game here, although this one is perhaps a bit more whimsical and strange and ponderous compared to Rad Zone Totality. And as I said, this is more of a journaling game, so there are mechanics that are outlined in this book, but it presents itself as a role-playing game. And under the principles here, beyond encouraging you to leap into the unknown, embrace risk and danger, and answer questions that are presented, it does point out that you should only roll dice if you're uncertain about what your character will be doing. It's a fiction-first game, so it's all about making a story. And you have a character who exists in this post-apocalyptic world. Your character has been living in a haven, a safe place, and for some reason they've got to go out into the world. So we have got guidance here to enable you to create a unique haven where you live. So your haven, for example, might be a garden Stepped pyramids of hydroponics rise to the ceiling, lit by an orange artificial light. You might add a detail such as having strong taboos that mean this haven has beliefs that many outsiders would think strange. What are they? Your leader might be a dictator prone to rage or a child prophet. Then you have a tech level and an upside, a positive thing about your haven. And then you might want to give your character a quest when they head out into the world. So you could give them a want. So maybe their want is a sense of duty to serve the people of the haven. Or maybe instead of a want, you want a need, your character to have a need. So perhaps their need is leadership. A person of power in the haven, you've been trusted to lead this expedition. And then the rest of the book is largely filled up with very light touch rules that will allow you to navigate the different situations as you go through your journey outside of your haven. Because it is a journey of sorts, you will go through a series of scenes that you encounter on this journey. And for each of those scenes, you will look at this oracle here to find out the location of the scene, the beings and events that you might encounter, and other things that you might spot. So for example, you might find yourself near a fathomless lake and you roll for a rumour. And the rumour might be that nearby a group of post-humans are emerging from their vast underground haven, all sharing mutations. We've got another table of twists here. You can see you use a standard deck of cards when you are generating these things. And we have a little outline here of the most basic rules, what you have for a stop on your journey, how you perform various checks. We've got a fairly simple bestiary here, just a one-page deal that sort of outlines the sort of things you might come across. A timeline of how this world has gone, so a bit more lore, character creation, archetypes for your character, skills they might have. They may well have the ability to use magic. They might have mutations, or those you come across might have mutations. So there's a lot of depth in here. So if you're looking for a journaling game, one that isn't too overwhelming and provides a lot of ideas and imagination and a well-formed world, then Lone Eons is something worth checking out. There's a lot in this little book. So it's a very nicely produced little zine. It's an interesting world, and if you're looking for a journaling experience and you like post-apocalyptic stuff, Lone Eons might be of interest to you. Next up, we've got a second game in this list from Black Oath Entertainment. This one's called Broken Shores, Brutal Survival in a Drowned World. I've played this a little bit off camera, not as much as I would like, but I haven't yet done a playthrough of it. There are a couple of playthroughs available on YouTube if you are curious. So this is a solo first role-playing game, one that's got enough mechanical structure to it and a clearly defined game-playing loop that ensures you always know what you're doing. There is plenty of scope for journaling and creativity, but at the same time, if you're like me and you like things kind of spelled out for you, might be a good one for you. So you play a drifter on a planet that has been fully or almost fully flooded. So basically what we got here is an ocean hex crawl. You are exploring this world, journeying in some kind of floating vehicle, a boat you might say, but you might not even have a boat, you might just have a raft, and you're exploring ancient ruins, lush islands, floating derelicts. The world is ancient but ripe for discovery and profit. So we've got fairly in-depth mechanics. You have a series of stats: strength, dexterity, constitution, will, intelligence, charisma. So you'll make your character. You have skills that you can spend skill points on, such as crafting and dodge. Then you've got talents, such as archery expert, fast swimmer, controlled breathing, other stuff. And then you sort of have a few prompts that will give you a starting point in terms of your character being interesting. So your character always starts having been captured by a cult. So you got D10 to find out what the cult was. It might be the cult of the Red Sky, a doomsday cult that endlessly sacrifices victims to Uara, goddess of the sky. Why were you captured? How long ago were you captured? How did you escape? What did you steal as you escaped? Some random starting gear, and then you are out into the world. There's some leveling up rules. Then you've got rules for play, for combat, quite in-depth rules for combat, for fumbles, for crits, for healing, permanent wounds and injuries you might get, what happens if you get fatigued, some rules for crafting. Alex T, the designer at Black Oak Games, is a big fan of crafting, I think, and so there are crafting rules in this. And then you've got rules for sailing, different vessels, and then GM-less rules and tools. So this is, I guess, a game that can be fairly easily played as a group experience. Then you've got some rules for GM-less play here, play without a GM, i.e. solo, that follow fairly well-established concepts, such as having oracles for answering yes-no questions. So if your character finds themselves in a situation and you don't know a particular detail that you think is important, then you can ask that a question related to that aspect that you want to find out more about. You roll a dice, and then you find out whether what you have asked is likely or unlikely, essentially. So you might ask, this room that I've entered, is there anything in here that will help me find the person that I'm currently tracking? And you roll a dice and you find out that it's very likely. There are some oracle tables here that can be used to work out what a character is doing or what a place might be like. Some tables for aiding the running of combat. So I would say this is probably a bit more of a challenging solo experience. If you're very comfortable with role-playing games, you might not find that to be the case, but if you come from a board gaming background or you're not that familiar with role-playing games, maybe this one won't be something you find so easy. Then we've got exploration tables. So as you are moving around the waterlogged world, you'll roll, and this is where I'm talking about it being a bit more mechanical. You move to a new hex, you roll to find out what's there. You found a derelict, use the derelict creation tables if you decide to explore it. Then we've got rules for derelict exploration and traps you might find, rules for island exploration and what you might find on an island. Yeah, there's plenty in here. Alex makes very well-rounded games that really do give you everything that you need in order to get deep into an imaginative and an unusual world. And Broken Shores very much achieves that. Next up, we've got the other end of the spectrum, really. This is Harper's Quest 2 from Joy Peddler Games, and I've played this one on the channel, and this is a game that comes in at 27 pages, and it provides a more free-form, traditional fantasy role-playing experience, although I think you can probably use it for any genre if you are so inclined. But it does less hand-holding than some of the other games on this list. You're not going to find exhaustive tables for everything that you will encounter. You will be expected to bring a degree of imagination, to bring your own ideas, and to take more of a front seat in the generating of the experience that your character will have. This is a game where you will be taking a character into a quest area. So you come up with a quest, and we have some very simple random tables that will be used to generate your quest. Then you build a quest area. You create a character. So we've got some weapons, some spells, and then you go through the quest area in order to try and complete your quest. We've got another oracle here, but not only does it do yes-no questions, which this top row allows us to handle, it also handles a whole bunch of other things. It's a super clever little table. So as you're going, you come across a door. What's the situation with this door? It's locked. What else have we got here? You are having to rest. Your character is having to rest. What happens as they are resting? 4, it is uneventful. But had you rolled a 1, an enemy might have come across you. You come across an NPC, a non-player character. How are they going to react to you? 1, they offer you a clue about where you might find a boss. And it handles searching for items, the contents of rooms, the types of enemies that you would encounter. So this page here really gives you an awful lot of randomization for the different situations you'll come across. Got rules for combat, rules for NPCs and hirelings and traps. More rules related to combat. So combat is interesting and different, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. Then we've got rules for creating enemies, because at the start of the game you're going to have to come up with your own enemies essentially, and there's rules for how you do that. And similarly, rules for bosses. You're going to have to create a boss that you're going to fight, but it does provide some details and weaknesses that your boss might have. And then we've got some quest ideas here if you want to add a bit more depth to your quests. And then we've got a starting adventure that you can take your character through, and then a bunch of random tables at the end that will give you ideas as you are playing. Harper's Quest 2, if it looks interesting to you, check out my playthrough on the channel. Next up, we've got Kal-Arath, which is a solo role-playing game from a designer called Castle Grief. This copy here is one that I printed out myself, but you can get physical copies, and Castle Grief runs Kickstarters, or has done up until now, moderately frequently, so you can grab copies through those Kickstarter campaigns as and when they happen. But Castle Grief is a designer who approaches his games with quite a old school, rough and ready, handmade aesthetic, and that kind of lends itself to being printed out on a home printer. So I think Kal-Arath sort of evolved naturally when Castle Grief was busy creating a world that interested him and a set of mechanics that would allow simple play within that world, and eventually it just sort of turned into a game and it was released. There are some expansions, such as the Lords of the Pit expansion and the Ziggurat, and I think there's more still that I don't have my hands on, and there's quite a bit of third-party material for it as well. I'll read a little bit of the intro to give some flavour here. Greetings, wanderer of wild and treacherous lands, seeker of glory and power untold. You have set your foot upon the perilous path into a savage land, a realm where ancient demons demand sacrifice and vie for power, and mortals strive against one another with blood, magic and steel. This massive steppe is known to its peoples as Kal-Arath, although the barbarians of the north refer to the vast grassland as the Krieg. Arathi civilization centres around the stony plateau of Kareld, heart of the Khanate of Akai, the demon lord of Kal-Arath. It's a sword and sorcery setting, a brutal one, and it's a game that provides more of a true role-playing experience, in that you don't know what your character is going to experience until you start, and they're wandering around this world and having all kinds of encounters that you will generate using the various mechanisms and oracles in this zine. So super quickly, we have got character creation, some skills. You can play a warrior or a rogue or a mystic. Combat rules, magic rules. Magic is quite important in this game, quite central, and it can be very brutal. Magic isn't safe in Kal-Arath, and we've got casting failures, so you might fail when you're casting and then something nasty would happen. The caster becomes cursed by a demon, causing them to suffer misfortune and accidents. Then we've got some spells, bit of equipment and weaponry. And then we're into the sort of resources that really are in here because this is a solo first game. we've got a What Fate Brought You Here table. So at the start of your game, you've created your character and you're thinking, what on earth are we going to do? What is my character here for? What are we going to do? Well, you can roll a 12-sided dice and find out. 9. Legend has it an ancient text known as the Naga Scrolls are lost to time somewhere in a hidden monastery far from civilization. These scrolls are filled with arcane knowledge that many would do anything to obtain. So your character is after those scrolls to find out what the knowledge is in the scrolls. And you won't know until you get there. Or maybe you're going to find out along the way. Perhaps you stumble across a different character, a non-play character, who might have some information and can give you some details. So you're looking for the scrolls. Other things might happen as well, but always in the back of your character's mind is that one overarching objective. So we've got some oracles, and we've got some sort of more flavour oracles. I'm not sure what you'd call these. Sort of keyword oracles, I suppose. And so you've got your standard yes/no oracle up here, but then we've also got these D66 oracles for story questions, turning points and situations. So you are in a particular situation, you found yourself, your character has been captured, and you want some inspiration as to what's going to happen, and you roll a 12. Betrayal. Maybe one of your captors is going to betray the others for some reason, and that will enable you to escape and to gain insight into people, places and things. So you escape from your captors, but you find yourself still in their lair where they've taken you. You roll a 35. Forbidden. Maybe there's a forbidden room in the lair and you try and seek it out. So that's sort of how those tables are intended to be used. Then you've got some details on overland travel, how the weather works while you're travelling, getting lost, foraging, and then points of interest. So this really does have everything you need just to sort of get started on a simple hex crawl with a quest in mind and moving through the world. So this is another D66 table. So you go into a new hex and you come across a settlement or a nomad bazaar. So that's cool. We've got encounters that you can have in the grasslands. Then we've got rules for settlements, details about important NPCs in the settlements, rumours and opportunities. There's a lot in here. You really don't need anything else other than what is in this book to get started. So there we go. That's Kal-Arath from Castle Grief. If the setting appeals to you, or if you're looking for a simple solo RPG that plays more like a traditional RPG with a very low barrier for entry, Kal-Arath might be what you're looking for. The next game is a print and play game from Perplexing Ruins, who is perhaps better known for his role-playing game Fallen, which is quite popular in indie role-playing game circles. But these solo sheets, these solo role-playing sheets, attempt to provide you with everything you need, with the exception of some rules, to play a simple solo role-playing game session. I believe the current iteration that I have here in front of me is designed to work with Whitebox, which is a derivative of the original Dungeons and Dragons. It's a very straightforward little role-playing game, very cheap. I think you can buy it for a couple of dollars. It's very straightforward and has a lot of cool content in it, a nice bestiary, really all the rules you need to get up and running with a very simple, traditional, old school style role-playing game. And that's the rule set that this game uses. And the idea is everything is on a single sheet, or two sheets, if you want to delve into a dungeon location. We've got an area here to draw a hex map. So you pick a starting point, having created a character or a party of characters, and we've got little character sheets down the side for that. So you pick a starting point. I guess you would put a settlement in it, And then what are we going to need? We're going to need a quest of some kind. So if we turn to the other side of the sheet that I've got printed out separately here, yep, we've got a little quest section. So let's roll for an action. 3, explore. Where, let's turn to the where table, a cave. So your character needs to explore a cave. What opposition are we going to meet in the cave? A cult. So we are going to explore a cave that is a hideout or a temple for a cult. What is our target in the cave? 5 would give us an NPC, so we are seeking an NPC in a cave. So you would decide how far the cave away is from your starting location. Then you'd go on a bit of an overland journey to get to your destination. We have exploration tables up here, so the first hex you go into might be grassland. Then we've got the weather. Then we've got discoveries that you might find, and all the little tables lead to other tables. So for example, when you go into a new hex, and if you roll a 4 or a 5, you'd roll a discovery. You'd flip over to discoveries, and down here we've got a discovery table. It's been a while since I've used these sheets. So we'd roll on there and we get an unnatural discovery. Roll on this table over here and we get something, an unnatural glowing. Then you have to work out what that is. You've also got a nice travel encounters table here. So if you have a specific encounter, 3 gives you a mystical glade. Roll again and we get a mystical glade that radiates calm. And you have to think about what your character might be doing there. And we've got these extra tables here. We've got some nice enemy tables down the side that gives you the stats for the enemies. Some tables here for rolling up characters, for rolling up NPCs. A nice NPC interaction section here. So what would an NPC do when you say hello to them, for example? What are they like? What is their motivation? And then a little area here for generating details about settlements and for generating items and magical items. Very cool. You could use this and a simple rule set like White Box and get up and running in no time, just as I did in my playthrough of this using a previous version. And we've got the dungeon location sheets here as well, with a whole bunch of other tables. Really cool little resource. I think it's pay what you want, or just a couple of dollars, but certainly throw a couple of dollars in the direction of Perplexing Ruins if you do grab it, especially because at the moment he is developing a slightly expanded version, I think in a little zine, and that is going to be a really, really good resource once he's finished putting it together. And the more we support him through this, the more motivated he will be to continuing to develop that. So that is the solo sheets from Perplexing Ruins. Next up we've got Sprawlopolis, and this is a pivot away from the zine sort of based games we've been looking at and back towards card based games. This is also a pivot into my print and play collection. This is a card game that you can get physically, but you can also download the files, print it out yourself and make it yourself. And given the fact that this is an 18 card game, it's not too daunting a prospect to do that. This is also a bit of a pivot into, I think, possibly the only non-fantasy, non-science fiction game on this list, and that's kind of why I wanted to include it, really. Because predominantly what we cover here on the Lone Adventurer channel is fantasy games, with the occasional science fiction game thrown in for good measure. I just wanted to highlight that there are solo games out there for people who like contemporary, non-fantastical settings as well. So here we've got Sprawlopolis. So this is a game from Stephen Armini, Danny Devine and Paul Kluka. And it's a game that will appeal to people who come from the SimCity generation. If you like building a city and working out performant ways of structuring your city, then this might be for you. already I'm just zoning in on laying out the cards in a pretty way. So the way this game works is before you start playing cards, you randomly select 3 and flip them over to give you scoring objectives for this particular game, because these have all got different scoring objectives on the back. For this game we might have stacks and scrapers, 2 points for every industrial block adjacent to only commercial or industrial blocks. Bloom Boom, 1 point for each row and column with exactly 3 parks in it, -1 point for each row and column with no parks in it. And Concrete Jungle, 1 point for every industrial block that shares a corner with at least one other industrial block. So it's a little puzzle, really. It's a tricky little puzzle. I find it quite challenging. I don't think I've ever actually succeeded at this game. We've got solo rules on the back here, and the way it works is you have 3 cards in your hand, you look at them, you pick one to play. The card you play has to overlap at least one existing square, I believe, and then you draw up, and then you carry on until you run out of cards. And then you score 1 per block for each of the largest block of each type of land use. So we would get 3 points for this park here. Then you'd tally up the points for your specific targets. And then you would subtract 1 point for each road. So this is quite a messy city when it comes to roads, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 roads. So we would lose 5 points. And that's how it works. That's Sprawlopolis. I think there's 3 or 4 different games in the Sprawlopolis universe now, and I think you can kind of combine them to make mega games. Possibly. I think I read that somewhere. But if you're looking for a quick little puzzle game that can be carried around in your pocket, and you want something every now and then that hasn't got orcs in it, then Sprawlopolis is a good little option. Sticking with print and play games, and sticking with 18 card games, we've got Ugly Grython Inn from Scott Almes. Scott Almes is a very prolific game designer. He's got something like 10 pages of games on Board Game Geek. I was looking last night in preparation for this video. He's the designer behind all or the majority of the tiny epic games that are very popular. But this is a one-person only game. This is a solo-only game. It plays in about 20 minutes. And we're back into the more comfortable realm of fantasy games here. So in Ugly Grython Inn, you are running the titular inn. You are the inn owner, and you're going to receive customers into your inn, and hopefully they will stay in your inn. And if you get 7 customers staying in your inn by the end of the game, then you have won. And essentially the way it works is you have a bar down at the bottom. These are patrons that have come into your bar, and every round you move one of them up into the inn, to the top of the inn. And so these will gradually refill, and then you pick another one and move them in. But they have irks. They have things about them that have to be considered. So you have to make measured decisions about who you're going to admit into the rooms of your inn from the bar. For example, the Clumsy Wizard. If the wizard is at the top of the inn, the wizard casts a brand new spell, take the 3 patrons below him, shuffle them and place them back in a random order. So he might mess up your carefully constructed order of patrons. The Feasting Monk. If there is food directly above or below this room, the monk leaves quietly. So right now, directly below the Clumsy Wizard, the Fasting Monk would leave. And then you carry on cycling through. You might put the indecisive Doppelganger up here. If there are 4 or more food in the inn, the Doppelganger shapeshifts into someone else. Draw a card and place it in the Doppelganger's room and return Doppelganger to the bottom of the deck. I was drawn to the art for this one. The theme appealed to me, but it was certainly the art that sort of drew me in and made me want to make a copy of this myself. It's a quick playing little game. It's a lot harder than it might initially appear. And again, I think you can find physical copies through, what's the company called? Button Shy. or you can do what I did. You can download the files online for a couple of dollars and make a copy yourself. That's Ugly Grython Inn from Scott Alms. Next up, we've got the first print and play game that I ever made, and it's still a game that I really enjoy. There's now a big box version of this with all sorts of additional features, but you can download the 9-card print and play version of Under Falling Skies from Thomas Uliffe for free, I believe. At least last time I checked you could. So I don't remember exactly how this game works, so apologies if I am laying it out incorrectly. And in fact, we're not going to be able to fit everything on screen, so I will omit a couple of cards here, I think, just so we can get a general idea of it. So in Under Falling Skies, you are in charge of a base of resistance fighters, I guess, who are fighting back against an alien invasion. So we've got this kind of Space Invaders style mechanic where the aliens will be gradually moving closer and closer to your base, and in your base we have different positions where you can place dice to indicate what kind of actions you are choosing to take. So your actions might be to shoot down aliens, to increase your energy supply, to gain robots to help you with other actions. And it's kind of a dice placement game. I don't remember how many dice you're rolling each round, but you roll your dice and you place your dice on the actions that you want to do, but you can only place one die in each column. So actually it must be 5 dice, mustn't it? And every time you place a dice in a column, then an alien in that column will get closer, and they might trigger certain actions. So I think if they go there, then they hit your base for 4 points. If they go there, then they switch over to the column next to it, and they gradually get closer and closer. And if they get down the bottom, then they do 6 points of damage to you. And the aim is to take out the aliens, I think, before your base is destroyed. So that's a very simple overview. It's been a little while since I've played, but it's a really clever little mechanic. I can see why it was picked up to create a larger game. The larger game comes in a box about yay big. It's still not particularly big a game, but it has like a campaign mode. But this 9-card version really does hold up. It's a lot of fun. The design of it is very appealing. I like things that look pretty, and this definitely looks pretty. My printed copy has got sort of printing lines on it because I made it with my old hinky printer. I made this copy myself, printed out and stuck onto card. And that is almost all of the print and play card games in this list, but there is one more coming. And that one is probably the most ambitious card game build that I've done, I think. No, it's not. That would be Ironhelm, wasn't it? I've made way more cards for Ironhelm. This is Agent Decker, and it's a deck building game, and it's got kind of a spy theme. So actually it's another game with no fantastical elements, as I recall. It's set entirely in the real world. You can see sometimes when you're doing print and play, if you get the alignment off, you end up with cards that are less than perfect, which I find frustrating sometimes, but it is unavoidable if you do enough print and play games. So Agent Decker is a mission-based deck building game. It is from a designer called Manuel Correa, and in it you play a rookie spy on your first mission. So it's kind of like a little campaign game. There are 5 different missions for you to take on. We've got a little card to track the alarm as you're going into these missions. Then we have our basic cards here, which are punch cards and hide cards. And then you have a series of cards that you can purchase and add to your deck as you're playing. So there we go. That might be the lineup. I don't recall the exact number of cards that you have in the lineup. The rules are fairly straightforward. We've just got 2 sheets of paper here, and it looks to me like it's actually 6 cards in a lineup, so we'll get another one out. So you are attempting to complete these missions one at a time. You have your deck of cards, and the aim is to complete the mission without setting off the alarm. As you're playing, you'll improve your deck of cards by adding new weapons and skills, and also removing cards from your deck that you don't like the look of as you're going. So each round you will draw some cards. I'm guessing it'll be 5 or maybe 4. Yeah, it looks like 4 since we've got 8 cards to start with. So you draw 4 cards, and we've got 3 stealth cards and 1 fighting card. The stealth cards can be used to purchase additional things, I think. So we could use these 2 cards to purchase this one, and then when you have fully gone through your deck, that would be folded in and shuffled in, so then you have access to that card. And then your fighting cards can be used to take out enemies, I suppose. Again, this is another one that I haven't played for a little while, but back in my early print and play days I played this quite a bit. The card design is really appealing. I like the artwork. It kind of makes me think a little bit of Mini Rogue, purely because of the stylized sort of blocky artwork, I guess. And when I'm playing games not on my own, one of my favourite genres is deck building games. I'm a fan of games like Eons End, and we play a fair amount of the legendary games in my house as well. So I like deck building. It's cool to have a solo game with a deck building mechanic, and the theme of spies is good fun as well. Makes a nice change again to the fantasy games that I'm typically checking out for the Lone Adventurer channel. So that is Agent Decker from designer Manuel Correa. So we're back in the more familiar territory of zine games now, pencil and paper games, and this is another game with a post-apocalyptic setting, The Ferryman from Cody Spears at Nightbird Games. In The Ferryman, you are trying to survive in a brutal post-apocalyptic landscape. It is a perilous realm teeming with raiders, ferocious beasts and harsh weather. And you're going to be seeking supplies, jobs and companions, and hoping to improve your character and your vehicle to a point where you think you might be able to escape this land. At which point you move to the edge of the map, because this is another overland exploration game. You'll be moving around a map, and when the time comes and you think you are ready to leave, you'll move to the edge, and you will roll on something called the Exodus table, and you'll go through a process to see whether you are able to survive. So we have a nice simple gameplay loop in this one. It's very much a game for people who like to do a bit of dice chucking and have all of the encounters and events and people that you might come across laid out for you in the book. So the gameplay loop is that you travel to an adjacent space, you explore it by either investigating a mission site or by rolling on the exploration table, and then you camp in order to rest and heal and repair stuff, and then that's the end of your turn. So we've got rules about moving around the map sheet. You start in a town called Sprocket, and you can always return to Sprocket to rest, repair, recruit companions, or to take on new missions. It's a fairly table-heavy game. We have got a terrain table here. As you move into a new location, you roll to see what the terrain is. We've got the gloomy starvation table, travel events table, camp events table, and then we've got a companions table. You might end up with Skeet, who has a special ability. Gain 1d6 supplies of your choosing upon arrival in the colony. However, you must roll 1d6 on a 1. Skeet is captured by guards and vanishes. Or you might get a doggo companion. Then we've got the missions. There are 12 different missions by the looks of things, or 11 different missions. And then we've got the exploration table, and this is a whole bunch, I think it's D66, so you roll 2 6-sided dice and that gives you a 2-digit number, and if you rolled a 4 and a 2, you would be rummaging through a ruin and you hear a sound from beneath a soiled mattress. Carefully you slide the mattress across and uncover a small hole that has been crudely carved through the concrete. Suddenly a quivering voice begs you to depart and leave them be, so you either choose to investigate further, in which case you look at section A, or you leave and carry on. If you investigate further, you roll another d6 and that affects the outcome of what is happening. So we've got quite a few random events, enough to keep you playing a few times, I think, before you start to get a significant amount of repetition. And there is a Wasteland expansion at the back. I'm not too sure what that adds, but it seems to add more missions and more companions, I can tell you that much, and some side quests. And then at the back we've got our character sheets and whatnot. So there you go, it's a fairly light and accessible game, and if you want to check out something post-apocalyptic, but perhaps Rad Zone Totality, maybe that one was looking a little too overwhelming, the Ferryman is a lot quicker to get up and running, and you can get it digitally or you can get physical copies as well, like I've got here. That's the Ferryman from Nightbird Games. Up next on the list is Delve, a solo map drawing game designed by Anna Blackwell. You are drawing a dwarven kingdom, a subterranean dwarven kingdom, and it uses a standard deck of playing cards. You draw, you reveal what the new rooms are, all the rooms that you're adding to your dwarven subterranean kingdom, adjust the mechanics and add different abilities and things. There's simple combat rules as well. So on a square bit of paper you draw a stairwell at the centre, and this is the entrance to your hold. You have to keep track of resources and trade goods, and you have 20 of each to start, and you also need to keep track of your units that you have. You start with 5 soldiers and you can add more units as you are going. Then you get cracking. We have a very simple turn structure. Each turn you explore by drawing a card, you resolve any combat, you trade resources for trade goods or vice versa if you would like to, and then you build new features including rooms, traps and barricades, and you recruit new units. When you draw a card, a heart gives you resources, a diamond gives you trade goods, clubs give you natural formations, and spades give you remnants, ruins and foes. Rules on building and recruiting, simple rules on combat like I said, and then we're into rooms and things. So if you draw a heart, you can draw a room. You might spend 8 resources to draw a barracks. Barracks can hold 10 soldiers or 10 gunners. Or if you're more flush, you can build an inn. That would take 30 resources and 10 trade goods. And then when you draw it, a particular kind of adventurer takes residence in your inn, and we've got a table of adventurers elsewhere in the zine. And I guess they give you special abilities. You can build kennels, labs, libraries. You don't have to be a brilliant artist, but if you are, you can make your dwarven kingdom look very appealing. We've got other rooms here: kitchens, hospitals, treasuries, advanced rooms, traps and barricades. Then you've got natural formations that might affect how your kingdom will develop. So you might get an underground river if you draw a 4 of clubs. You might get a volcanic shaft if you draw a 10 of clubs. Then we've got remnants of old civilizations. You might come across a slumbering worm or an abandoned mine. Here's our adventurers. Then we've got some magic, good magic, bad magic, weird magic, some inventions. I'm not sure how this stuff comes into play. Legendary finds, ancient monstrosities. So there's some cool stuff. The further you get into the game, the more you'll sort of get deeper into these tables as you're drawing your kingdom and fighting any insurgents that you come across. There is a lot of expansions for this game. I'm not sure if they're listed in here. Yeah, it just says that Anna's was intending to make additional expansions, and I know there are additional expansions out there. It's a popular game. There's a Discord where people talk about it and share pictures of the maps that they have drawn. So if you like exploring, if you like dwarves, or if you like just drawing cool little realms and having a little adventure through your drawing, then have a look at Delve. Glide from Cody Bar at Sleepy Sasquatch Games is one of my personal favourites. I did a fairly lengthy multi-part playthrough of this on the channel, and on the surface of it, it might seem to share some similarities with a bunch of other games that we have already looked at. It's a game where you are exploring over land, trying to complete quests, having encounters of varying kinds, but this is set apart from the others partially because of its interesting setting, which is a little bit like that found in the Dune series. But also the mechanics are unique to this game, very well thought through. And once you get into it, it plays really well. So it's set in Eridor, which is home to people from all walks of life, be it native to the planet or off-world. Many traders, adventurers and explorers bring with them the much needed resource for the people in exchange for artifacts of the past and bountiful credits. So it's a science fiction game, but it's set on a planet, kind of like Tatooine in Star Wars, I guess, a desert planet. This is a game with great art from Emil Boven, who is the designer behind the Dwarf game, and Perplexing Ruins, who is an artist who was also a game designer. Earlier in this list we saw the solo game sheets from Perplexing Ruins. We have some character backgrounds, items and resources, so it's very good at sort of presenting its ideas in an accessible and easy to navigate way. And I would say there's been an update, there's been a new edition of it since I printed this out. And the new edition is even better laid out and carefully thought through. Then we roll for a starting location and introductory event. Rather than roll, we're drawing a card, because this is another game that uses a standard set of playing cards. So for an introductory event, if you draw a red suit, you are returning to the valley, and then you just choose one of these. You returned home better off than when you left, and it shows. So you start with an additional 100 credits. You gain a permanent 25 credit discount on glider purchases. That's pretty handy. Or if you draw a black suit, you have an introductory event. Then we've got a nice simple gameplay loop that's easy to understand, clearly laid out actions that you can take. You can move, reveal, explore, camp and settle. You can move into locations next to yours. You can reveal, which is kind of like looking into an unknown area and finding out what is in it. And then you can explore in the location where you find yourself. We have a bunch of settlement actions, so if you find yourself in a settlement, you can do all sorts of things. How to move, how to reveal new locations, and it's all based on card draws. So if you drew a 6, a black 6, you would find a gorge, which is non-traversable, and if you drew a red 8, you'd find a settlement ruins, which is an explorable location. And then location explorations, we've got a whole bunch of interesting things that you might come across. Really cool tables in this book. Annoyingly, I printed my copy off wrong so that the full page images don't look quite as nice as they should. Desert explorations, camping rules, glider upgrades, because you have like a hovering sci-fi bike like in Star Wars, and you can do different upgrades to your glider. Encounters you might have in a settlement, rules for trading, rules for companions. Oh, and we haven't even got to the quests yet. There's different guilds, and each guild has different quests that you can take to do. So if you go and work for the Guild of Ecology, the level 3 quest, the guild's wind trap systems require repairs, but their plants keep growing. Place a new wind trap location at least 5 hexes away. Then we've got some further instructions and the reward that you get. So we've got the Guild of Ecology, the Guild of Relics, the Guild of Exploration, the Restoration Guild, the Guild of the Glider. So there's a lot in this game, a lot in this little book. This is one that I recommend without hesitation. There are a bunch of expansions. I think there's 5 now. So yeah, this is one you can really sink your teeth into and spend a lot of time playing. Glide from Sleepy Sasquatch Games. 12 Years is a solo-only adventure game, an overland exploration game, which I realise we've had a couple of on this list, but 12 Years, in my mind, occupies a really well-established little niche in the genre for a number of reasons. I would say partly because it is just such a well-produced little package, a lovely little zine, and a game with very clearly laid out mechanics and tables that's really easy to use and to get into. And there's a number of things that I like about this game, so I guess I'll reveal those as we are going through. First of all, did I say who the game is by? I'm not sure that I did. It's from a designer called Max Moon and a company called Max Moon Games, although I think Max has recently formed a new organisation, company, with another designer. And it's worth pointing out that I know that this is currently being reprinted and will be readily available quite soon, following the recent successful Kickstarter for a new version where you are travelling around an ocean rather than a landmass. So the first thing to note really is just how lovely this little zine is. It's a really beautiful little package. I'm not sure what sort of paper it is, but it's got a nice feel. The cover's nice. It's the is it linograph style printing on the cover. It's just very beautifully put together. Now, in 12 Years, you are an adventurer who is attempting to dispatch a lich who has cast a long shadow over this land and needs to be defeated so that people can live their lives. And you have 12 years in which to do it, which might sound like a long time, but actually 12 years can go by quite quickly. In 12 Years, you will form a party of adventurers. In the base game, they are made up from these types, these archetypes: the hermit, a rogue, the fey folk, and the giant, and they each have a different power and a different weakness. Parties can come and go quite quickly. The party members will die, the parties will be defeated, at which point another year passes, you form another party and you carry on. So that is a little unusual in games like this, in that the game kind of continues until you run out of 12 years. It doesn't stop when your characters die. You just keep on generating more characters and they will hope to take up the mantle and to carry on and ultimately defeat the lich. So you create your party, give them some weapons. We've got some loot tables here. The approach to loot is quite cool. Every time you find some loot, so say if you find a book, you jot that down, then you roll on this loot quality table, and that affects the value of your book. So if you roll here and your book turns out to be ornate, then you multiply the value by 10. However, if you roll a 5, your item, your loot, would turn out to be a magical item. Then you roll on this, and you get a magical ability for that item. So if you rolled 4, it would be a Moonkissed magical book, and it can be used as follows: in the place of a successful attack, heal any party member 5 HP, or use once at any time to fully heal the party. And those loot rules reflect the sensibility of this game, in that Max has very carefully thought out the mechanics, and they're very interesting and nuanced, and they're kind of different to what you might find elsewhere a lot of the time. And combat is the same, really. For each round of combat, you just roll a 1d6, and then the outcome of that dictates the outcome of the combat. So you're not like working out your combat skill and your opponent's combat skill. You're not rolling for your attack and their defense. It's super simple. You roll 1d6, and then that tells you who deals the damage, who takes the damage, the type of damage, and the effect of that type of damage. So for example, if you rolled a 2, then the enemy would be getting the party with a standard hit, which does normal damage. Damage is explained below. But then if you roll a 6, the party damages the enemy with a palpable hit, which does double damage. And that happens to your party if you roll a 1. So the constant risk of there being palpable damage to the enemy or the party makes the combat surprisingly exciting, given the fact that you're only rolling 1d6 in order to make it happen. A few extra rules there, and then we're kind of into the meat of the game, which is the tables. So we've got rules for exploring the overland map, and basically every time you go into a new hex you roll 1d6 to work out what it is, and then you draw that. Then this little table here tells us what you need to do next, whether you roll on the encounter table or whatever. Then we have this encounter table that we roll for a lot of the hex types, and so you might encounter a creature that you have to fight, and then this leads on to all sorts of other tables and sections of the book. So everything sort of hinges around this exploring encounters table. So if you rolled a 4, for example, you would encounter a creature, and you'd find the creatures table, and you'd roll on that to see what you were encountering. If you rolled a 5, you'd encounter a friend, and you'd roll on the friends table. So if you're going into an existing hex, you only roll 1d6. But if you're going into a new hex, you roll 2d6. And you might find something exciting, like a stone portal, or the entrance to a dungeon. Because whilst you're exploring, you might also find yourself in a dungeon. And we've got rules here for delving into dungeon locations. They're very straightforward. Dungeon delves are very quick to run. We've got unique monster table for dungeons and a different table for encounters in a dungeon. And then that is mostly it. We've got level advancement rules for the passage of time, and then you've got what will happen when you get to the final location at the top of the map. Do we have the map in here? Yes, we do. So you start down here in the start spot, and then you can sort of mosey your way up, and when you're ready to encounter the Lich, you go up to the castle. And then there's rules for encountering the Lich when you get there. What a cool little game. There's a few expansions to it that I won't show you now, but if you check out my 12 years playthrough here on the channel, you'll see some of those expansions being shown off as well. So that's 12 years from designer Max Moon. Next up, we've got Scrap from Odd Gob Games. I was originally going to include a different game from the same designer called Lichdome. I've played both Scrap and Lichdome on the channel, but I couldn't find my copy of Lichdome, so I pivoted to Scrap, which I still had printed out. Now I've printed this out at A4 size, but as you can see that's resulted in quite large text, so I think you can print this out smaller and make a little zine out of it. So print it out at A5 in sort of booklet mode, and it will come out quite nicely, I think. So in Scrap, you are a scrapper with no true home and a hungry belly. You are forever searching the wastelands for scrap to sell at settlements. So it's another post-apocalyptic game, and this one is focused on collecting scrap, which I think I've already said is something that drew me to the Fallout video games, and sort of collecting things is something that really appeals to me, and I guess that's why I enjoyed this game. So it's a really quick one to get into. It's the sort of game where you can print it out or look at it on a tablet, have a quick read, and 2 minutes later just start playing. So all scrap has a value. The total value of your scrap at the end of day 6 is your score. You start with 3 HP, a blank map, and an empty scrap bag. Each day you explore. So you roll 1d6 and then refer to a location table. You have an event and an outcome, and then you find out what scrap you're finding. At night there is the risk that the night goblin will come and have a negative effect. So he might reduce your XP, or he might steal your scrap. So you keep repeating until you hit night 6 or you're reduced to 0 HP. So I think this is a game that probably plays in like 10 to 15 minutes. We have a little character sheet. There's a character sheet that looks like this. so you can play 4 games on the character sheet before you have to print out a new one or rub out. And you have a nice little map section, so you can see I've drawn these in, so here's one in pencil. So for each one you draw in the terrain type, and then there's different iconography that you pop in here depending upon the encounters that you have and the scrap that you find. And then you have a scrap bag that you gradually fill up, and then you put your score up there. So it's super simple, a really nice little character sheet that is very aesthetically pleasing, I find. Reminds me a little bit of the Miru games with the curved edges and the nicely laid out tables and usable bits and pieces. And then we have the tables. So we have the different terrain types. We have putrid plains, sludge stream, wretched wart woods, caustic caverns, rotted ruins, and the mine-strewn megalith. So you go to these locations, and then these are the scrap items that you can find in those locations and the values that they have. And then on the other side, we have our main explore table that shows us which locations we are finding, along with some nicely drawn little example icons for the location types. And then we've got the events here and a little outcome table as well. And then that's it. So it's a really compact little package. Like I said, I don't think you need to print it out at this large size. You can print it out smaller. It's got a nice aesthetic with the 2 colours, beautifully laid out, a quick playing little game. I know this one has got its fans, but I think if more people discovered it, more people would enjoy it. That's Scrap from Odd Gob Games, and I can recommend Lich Dome from the same designer as well. Now we get to Notequest Expanded World from designer Tiago Junes. Notequest is a game that I'm very fond of. It's one of the first games that I played here on the channel, and it remains a very enjoyable and accessible game for people who are new to this hobby and want to play a game where you are going into locations, collecting loot, fighting things. It scratches that sort of itch and does it in a very fun and accessible way. So as you would imagine, we have got rules here for creating an adventurer. We have lots of different races, and in fact later on in the book it adds even more. So you might be a dwarf or an elf or a rhinoceraid, where you have a horn. That very quickly establishes that this is a game that can be a bit zany and a bit tongue-in-cheek. We have different classes, so you have a race, you have a class. So for example, if you're a gravedigger, then you deal 2 damage to the undead. And you just have to remember that and always do that. If you're a locksmith, you can open any door without consuming torches. Very cool. We've also got a spells table down at the bottom there off the screen, so different spells that you might have. Then we've got rules for building a dungeon. So you roll 3 dice and you might get the Crypt of the Eternal Rest. Rules for opening doors, rules for the final room, managing torches and darkness, different actions you can take in a dungeon, different actions you can take in a city, because this is an overland exploration game where you can join up your delves by doing a bit of overland exploration. And then we've got super simple combat rules and a few keywords that monsters have. And then we're into the meat of the book, which is these dungeon location tables, because every dungeon location type has a unique set of tables. So if you go into a palace, you turn to this page and you'd have this open for the whole delve into that palace location. Then if you were going into a crypt, you'd be looking at this page. Tombs, sanctuaries, temples, prisons. And then if we have a look at the prison one more carefully, when you go into a new area of the prison, you roll on this table. So you roll 1d6, and if you were at the start or at a staircase, you would look here. If you were already in a corridor, you'd look here. And if you were already in a room, you would look here. So if you were in a room and you rolled a 3, your next location would be a medium-sized room. There's a table for secret passages, a table for traps. Then down at the bottom, you've got the room content table. So you roll on this. If you rolled a 2, you potentially would find a secret passage. A 5 would get you some treasures. You might encounter some monsters, in which case we have a unique monster table for the prison there. Then you've got this rewards table, which is very cool. All sorts of different bits and pieces that you might find. Different bosses that you might come across. So whenever you go into a prison, I think you encounter just one boss. So the first time you go into a prison, it might be a fire serpent, which has fire breath. And then maybe your character goes into a temple, and then another time into a tomb, and then the next time you come back to a prison, when you roll on the boss table, you roll a 3, and it happens to be 2 hellhounds on this occasion. So there's such variety in this game. Then you've got the expanded world, which adds overland exploration, which I won't get into too much, but it's super accessible. And as you're doing overland exploration, you might come across the dungeons. So you'd come across the prison, then you'd roll to create the location name. We've got a few additional rules about getting money, stealing from people, what happens if you encounter ruins or portals, and then we've got all sorts, new races, new classes, new spells. There's a lot in this book. Buildings, you can build buildings and have politics going on. It's not as complex as that makes out. I think you can ignore a lot of that, or you can sort of get to it when you're deeper into your game. But then we have these deadlier dungeons. So we've got all new locations you can go into, like sewers, citadels, pyramids, a ziggurat, a laboratory, a necropolis. So as you can see, there's an awful lot in Notequest. If you're looking for a game in the sort of 4 Against Darkness arena, but you want something that's a little bit easier to get into, a little bit quicker to get up and running, like you can play this game over and over and over again and not encounter the same stuff and go into the same locations. And the overland exploration adds a whole other aspect to it as well. Notequest, really fun game, well worth checking out. Oh, and I should also say, if you want to check it out, you can get the non-expanded version, I think last time I checked, for free on DriveThruRPG. So I'll include links to the expanded version, but also to the basic version if that's still out there. So you can get the first set of locations and the rules for going into those locations in the basic version for free, I think. Notequest. Next up, we've got the Loom series from Jay Merritt at Shield Dice Studios. Now, Jay makes a lot of resources for tabletop gaming that can be used in conjunction with other systems and rule sets, but Loom is a self-contained solo game as well as a setting. Now, I don't have the original Loom game, it would appear. I thought I did, but I think I must have printed out bits and pieces when I did my original playthrough. But Jay did at some point very kindly send me this, which is a sequel to the original Loom game, called Loom: The Bells of Basin City, and also this Lore: The Lands of Loom, which just adds lore, loads and loads of lore and interesting cool stuff about the world of Loom. And you can see that Jay has created the world of Loom, the Loom product line, with a sort of a quasi-retro computing feel to it. A really cool book to have and flick through just to see someone's imaginative world-building creation. Anyway, we are looking at the game Loom here. And this is the Bells of Basin City version of the game. Now, this is another one, I'm afraid, that I haven't played for quite some time. So it says up here, Loom is a solo text-based adventure game. So the intent is to mimic old text-based adventure games on computers from back in the day. Using a map and a character sheet alongside procedurally generated paragraphs, you will explore a dark and twisted world of fantastical horror. Weave your own story as you play, find rare items, uncover hidden secrets, and use your command list to interact with the world. So in the same way that when you played text adventures you had to use commands, you have those commands in here as well. Where are the commands? Here they are. This is the command list. So the commands were the thing that you could type in that the text adventure game would recognise, like pick up, for example. And here your text commands are attack foe, climb viewpoint, pickpocket NPC, approach NPC, sneak, things like that. So you're going around the city location in which it is set. We've got a super cool character sheet here with a map built into the side. So I think you start down here and you make your way up, or vice versa. And as you are doing it, you'll come across towers and other stuff that I can't remember. We've got a city influence track here, pagans keys, standard lock, goblet lock. I don't know what any of this means, but it's super, super intriguing. Jay makes very unusual games with interesting mechanics, and one of the interesting mechanics here is the way that it generates the different encounters that you have. So you draw cards from a standard deck of playing card. So if you drew the 3 of hearts, you would have this encounter here, the tower side visions. And what you do is you complete the paragraph with randomized words. So for hearts, we would look at the randomized words in this table here. So for example, it might be as follows: the studded silhouette of a crumbling tower, time-worn, and casting a great murk across the rooftops here, lingers ahead. Above, a series of handholds rests a portal of dull light, and within you can see the outline of, and then we turn again, the outline of a workshop. You gaze down at the street below and see the forms of something else. And that is how you sort of build up the paragraph for the encounter that you're having. Each of those things that you choose has a numerical value that you put in here, and that gives you a challenge rating for the location. And then you have to overcome that challenge rating using your commands. So you can see that the approach of this game is really different, both in its aesthetic and in its mechanics. I think it would appeal to a lot of people. It's well worth checking out. You can see we have loads and loads of these encounters, or one for each card. And then for the Empress, the person who you are trying to defeat, and then different epilogues and ways your journey might end. And as a side note, Jay's writing is really strong, so this isn't one that you're going to be jarred out of by odd turns of phrase. Everything is beautifully written. From the city you creep, entering into the bowels of the cathedral, seeking a blade in the night. Where is the Empress? And is her throat bare, unaware that you wish to cut it? The hallways are draped in silver bands, let in by stained glass windows, each depicting one horror or another. So it's all, there's a lot of content in here, and it's all of a really high quality. Can highly recommend the Loom games. I've played the original. I haven't played this latest version. I'm not sure if there's anything else. I mean, they're a great looking product. Highly recommended. You can get them on Drive-Thru RPG, print on demand. That's the Loom series from Shield Dice Studios. So we've got another map drawing game now, and actually another game where you are creating a dwarven kingdom under the mountains and drawing the map as you go. This is a game called Dwarf Mine from James Hron at Paper Dice Games, I believe James's company is called. Paper Dice Games. And there are differences, of course, between this and Delve, and we'll get into those as we are looking through it. This is one I have played on the channel. So maybe it would be worth starting by showing you some game sheets. So when you play, you have to have 2 game sheets. One where you track your stats and various resources and the history of your mine, and another game sheet where you draw your mine as you are going. So I would say Dwarf Mine is a quicker playing game than Delve, and the aim is to try and sort of beat your own score, really. To gain the highest amount of prestige that you can, within the lifetime of your mine, because a dwarven mine has a finite life. So the game comes with this little booklet. I think maybe I printed it out a little too small. The writing is a little bit difficult to read. But as you go through the gameplay loop, you have your turn, in which you can take various actions, mainly building rooms and using rooms. Then we have treasure and combat rolls, and then you have to check for some persistent events. We have combat built into this game, so we've got rules for combat as you are making your mine. And then we have our different rooms. So each room has a name and a shape, a cost, which can be in gold. Is it all in gold? All the costs are in gold. Then we have a few bits of special information about those rooms. Hovels, you can only have 5, and each one gains you a population on each of your turns, because you are trying to increase the population of your mine, and if your population drops to 0, then that is the end of it. We've got other rooms like tombs, trading posts, war rooms. Then as you are going through, you will make your way through different levels. So when you're drawing up here, you are in level 1. If you go deeper, you're into level 2, and then into levels 3 and 4. And each level has its own table. So if you were in age 5 and you rolled a 7, you'd add on 5 and you would get a 12, which means in your current age you mined 5 gold and 1 d4 ore. But you also encountered a goblin tunnelling party with 5 health and 1 d4 attack. So combat is a lot more prevalent in this game than it is in Delve. It's very central. You'll be having combat encounters all the time. Then we've got similar tables for level 3, 2 and 3 and 4. And there's a whole bunch of other expansions that you can get for this game. People really enjoy this game, and there is plenty of material out there to supplement it once you get into it, to add variety and to play it in different ways and different contexts. Dwarf Mine, little mapping game that's a lot of fun. And we're getting to the end now, folks. One of the last games we're going to be looking at today is Voyages from Postmark Games. This is a game that I have not yet featured on the channel. It uses fairly straightforward roll and write mechanics. You are the captain of an ocean-going vessel, and you are sailing around this ocean here, collecting cargo, recruiting sailors, and trying to maximise your score as best you can. The other maps introduce other elements, other gameplay elements, and they change the game quite a bit. But let's focus on this main sheet. Each round of play you roll 3 6-sided dice. This little compass rose here dictates the direction that you are moving. So if you use your number 1 die, you'll be moving straight up, and if you use your number 2 die, you'd be moving on that diagonal, and the 6 would be over there. Those dice aren't going to allow us to get to anything particularly interesting, but if we had a 1 and a 5, then we could move from our start location up to this little symbol here, which would allow us to gain a hide, which is one of the cargo types that you are trying to collect. So we are moving around this map. You draw a line to show the progress of your ship. The dice that you don't use when you are moving, you use to cross off on this little duties roster down here, which gives you various advantages. So you're moving around, you're collecting cargo, you're visiting these little islands. At the end of the game, you score based upon the number of islands you've visited, the number of ocean regions you have explored. We've got these little dotted unexplored regions you might be able to see on the camera around the play area. And if you get to those, you score based upon how many you reach. You also score based upon the cargo that you sell. So you collect cargo, and then when you visit islands, you are able to sell the cargo. As you're going, you're also recruiting sailors, and sailors can be used to adjust the value of your dice. And you also get points at the end based upon the number of heroic sailors that you gain, because you can upgrade your sailors to heroic sailors. And then you get a big bonus if you manage to defeat the Dread pirate ship, which is in this location over here. So it's a very easy roll and write game to get into. There's quite a lot of depth and there's variety added by the extra sheets. Games from Postmark Games tend to be very well designed, very carefully thought through. They put a lot of care and attention both into the design of their games and into the creation of the resources. You can see that it's beautifully laid out. Just a visually very appealing game. So there you go, that's one that's a little bit different, a roll and write game, something you can play with multiple people or just on your own. Voyages is one worth checking out. Next up, our penultimate game in this epic 50 game list is Dungeon Pages. This is a solo tactical roll and write game with dungeon delving and monster fighting from designers Jason Greeno and Jason Tagmeyer, and it is released by the Print and Play Arcade publishing company. And I've included it for a couple of reasons. One, because again it's just a very well designed, a very well thought through system, but also it just comes with an absolute mass of content. There is so much Dungeon Pages stuff, and if you buy the full set, which won't set you back a huge amount of money, to be honest, it's only going to be, I don't know, maybe $10 or something. It just comes with dozens of sheets like this. I'm not going to try and put an amount on it. Suffice to say that it comes with enough of these sheets that you could probably just play this game for a year and not experience everything that it has to offer. Each sheet has a hero at the top and then a location or a series of locations that you will go into in one game of Dungeon Pages. And then down at the bottom we've got the monsters associated with that location or with that series of locations. So here we've got Amador, the Light Cleric. Each of the heroes has a specific ability, a set of weapons, and then a set of relics which I think are unique to them, or they vary based upon the hero that you are playing. And then the locations are all kind of linked, but I think you can do them in any order you wish. So these locations are in Thorn Valley. Can anyone break the grip of Gregor Thorn over the people of the valley? And in the valley we have the blacksmith, the decaying mill, the vault, the keep, and the Thorn Tower. So this is a game that veers towards being a puzzle. It's like a dungeon divey puzzle. Let's grab a sheet that I've actually played. Yeah, here you go. You have to create a link between the entrance, this little door symbol, and the treasure. And you can go any way you wish. As you're going around, you can also link numbers to these other items to gain keys or potions or additional money. But you're trying to create a link between the entrance and the treasure chest. And the link has to be numerically designed in such a way that the numbers are only one up or one down from the previous number. So we're going from 2 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 2 to 2 to 3 to 2. And because I successfully created that link, I got a bonus when I was exploring that particular location. We won't go too much more into the details. I have done a playthrough of this on the channel if it looks intriguing. We can see up here that I was playing Sigrid, and we were tracking Sigrid's health, and she was receiving damage as we were going and fighting the monsters, because as you can see we've got monsters in these locations that have been crossed off. In these particular locations we have orcs, we have frozen guardians, we have hunting spiders, and then we've also got a spike pit trap. We were tracking the health of Sigrid. We were also tracking XP points and levelling Sigrid up, adding additional weapons that allow Sigrid to move in different ways. And it looks like we only got one relic, I guess, a runed shield. It comes with very well written rules. As you can see, the rules for the game are quite in depth. What other sheets have we got here? We've got Sigrid, we've got Amador, and we've got Zafin here. Zafin was going into High Mount Village. Were we to play with Amador, he'd be going into Thorn Valley. Sigrid was going into Cliff Drop City. So each one has different areas that are set up in different ways and present different challenges. Dungeon pages, if you're looking for something really substantial to get into and you like puzzly things, then this might well be one to take a look at. And the final game on this list is Expedition to Skull Island. It's a game that I haven't shown on the channel in any way at all, I don't think, and so I'm very pleased that I was able to squeeze it into this list in the final spot. So Expedition to Skull Island is another game from Lone Spelunker. We featured the Lone Spelunker's other game, Dungeon Hero, in the first part of this list. Skull Island presents a very different style of game, and it is a lot of fun. I've played it a little bit, not as much as I would like, but it's definitely an interesting looking game. In it, you gather a crew, you provision a ship, and you head out to the mysterious Skull Island, where you hope to make your fortune, I guess. So this is the rulebook that I've got printed out here. I believe it's only available digitally at the moment. The rulebook isn't massive, but it was a moderately large printing job. I think we've got 60 odd pages here. And those 60 odd pages cover all the rules that you need to go on an adventure to Skull Island. You will print out a map of Skull Island. As you can see here, I've sort of used the rules to generate the layout of the island. There's a pre-generated island as well. That must just be in the files you get with it. So you don't have to design your own island that you're going to. But before you get to the island, you have to go on a voyage over the ocean, and there's different encounters and things that can happen when you are on that voyage. So before you head off, you can provision your ship with food, lamp oil, medicine, general supply, and ammunition. There's skill checks that you have to do, so you have to do a bit of dice chucking in this. There's combat rules and details about how to maintain your crew, because not only do you need a map sheet, you'll also have a ship's roster. So here we have got the pre-generated ship's roster of crew. You have up to 15 people on your crew, and they each have different abilities and keywords. You can also generate your own crew, so we have a blank roster sheet here as well. So you do some sea travel. That will last a variable amount of time. You'll have to check for the weather as you're doing that. You might stop at a small island, and you might have various encounters as you are journeying to Skull Island. Then we've got our rules for making your own map, exploring Skull Island, things you can do during the daytime, things you can do at night. You'll have to make a camp and then move around the island, and as you're moving around the island, you'll have different encounters based upon the different terrain that you are on. The rest of the book is made up of tables, basically. So there's loads and loads of different encounters. So there's lots of replayability, lots of surprises, lots of things that can go wrong. So these 2 pages here, or this 4-page spread, is just encounters that you might have on the beach. Then we're moving on to jungle encounters. For each terrain type, we have some common encounters which you are likely to come across. So for example, in the jungle, you might just encounter thick jungle that impedes your exploration, or maybe you would come across some warriors firing blowguns at you. But there is a chance you will have a special encounter. A 50-50 chance you'll have a special encounter. If you have a special encounter, then there's loads and loads of them. So for example, if you had a special encounter, you'd roll 2 dice. If you had a 4 and a 6, that would give you 46. So we turn to encounter 46. Chopping through the underbrush with your machete, you suddenly find yourself teetering on the dizzying edge of a cliff. Far below you see a river teeming with crocodiles. You are about to resign yourself to going back the way you came when you see an ancient-looking rope bridge spanning the chasm to the other side. You can only leave this hex by the way you came, or the opposite direction. Make a note on the map that every time you cross this hex, read Jungle Passage 77. So that pushes you ever further on in these encounters, and some of them are related to previous entries. The bridge is rickety and precarious. Roll a die. On a 1, read paragraph 75. Otherwise, this is the first time you've crossed this bridge. Gain +1 wonder. So very cool. And they just keep on going, those encounters. There's loads and loads and loads of. There's not a lot of piratey games out there. Certainly not a lot of piratey games that are fairly mechanical like this. Solo games where a lot of effort has gone in to come up with creative encounters and things that will surprise you as you're playing. So there's lots of replayability in this one, and if you're looking for a piratey pencil and paper game and you're managing a crew of piratey sorts as they're exploring an island, definitely one worth checking out, one that deserves to have a little bit more attention. So there you go folks, 50 solo games presented for your consideration. If you made it this far, I'm impressed. I respect your commitment to the Lone Adventurer channel and to solo gaming in general. I hope you discovered a few bits and pieces that you weren't familiar with. If you were familiar with all these games, then maybe you should get out more. Maybe I should get out more as well. This video took a lot of effort to put together. If you enjoyed it, do consider giving it a thumbs up. Drop a comment down below to let me know which of these games you've played, or which solo games you are outraged that I left off the list. Cue people mentioning Ironsworn and Morkborg, but have at it. Those are games I would love to bring to the channel, but I didn't pop them in this list on this occasion. Anyway, thanks for watching folks. Thanks for making it this far. See you next time. Bye for now.